hit record. So we are now recording. Can y'all see my screen? Somebody can just type yes in chat if you can see my screen for me. Okay, perfect. So today's Leadership Academy workshop is going to be over 7 habits of highly effective people. This is not something that I created. This is something that I found, and I think it's very important to go over just so that you know like what makes somebody work more effectively in different scenarios, as well as just like what can we be doing to make ourselves feel like we're being more productive and being highly effective in our roles as leaders on this campus. So the introduction. I want you to think about a time when things weren't going well in your life, just in general. You had a bad week, a bad day, bad semester, whatever it was. Why did you feel that way, and what exactly was happening? And when we think about those times, I want you to refer to this quote that says, until you begin to fight the challenges within you, you cannot succeed. And the verbiage is a little different on the screen, but this quote is very appropriate for today's session. Oftentimes, the difference between being successful and feeling good about yourself and things not going well can be 1 or 2 habits that you have that are holding you back. Today, we are going to focus on 7 habits of highly effective people based on the Stephen Covey book by the same name. We will be able to discuss these concepts in detail, and by the end of our time together, I hope we will have a better understanding and knowledge of how they affect our daily lives. So we're going to quickly go over the habits themselves. So the 7 habits are: habit 1 is being productive, 2, begin with the end in mind, 3, putting things first, 4, think win-win, 5, seek first to understand then to be understood, habit 6, synergize, and habit 7, sharpen the saw. So what are some habits that people have? I have a bad habit of I like to chew on my hoodie strings, or some people have the habit of procrastination. Sometimes habit is associated with a bad thing, but that's not always the case with some other things. There's also good habits. When I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is not check my phone. I think that's a good habit to have so that I'm not immediately bombarded with all of the emails that I've missed in my sleep. So kind of developing habits and how those work is what we're going to focus on, and what these 7 habits can do for you if you can correctly develop them. So a habit is a mixture of knowledge, desire, and skill. And so this flip chart kind of shows a really good visual representation of what builds a habit. You have to know what to do and why to do it. You have to know how to do it, and you have to have a desire to want to do it. And that really makes an effective habit. So with all of that going in mind, we're going to start talking about these 7 habits individually. And our first habit is being productive. So let's talk about first when you have something that happens to you that you don't really have control of, like you're planning this organization event that's going to be outside. You have everything planned for when it's going to be outside, and it's supposed to be like a really sunny day. And then Arkansas weather does what Arkansas weather does, and it ends up raining really bad that day. What are our feelings when things like that happen? For most of us, we're going to feel kind of a sense of crap, that little bit of panic of like, what do we do now? How do we solve this situation? So how do we avoid that situation entirely so that we're not caught off guard by these things? And being proactive is probably one of the best ways to do that. Being proactive simply means that you are able to think ahead and kind of build for this example of like it raining on an event. You have a rain plan already set up. So in the case that it does rain, you don't have to go back and think, oh, how do we reinvent the wheel? The wheel has already been reinvented for this rain plan, and you have your table set up for inside. You have what people are going to be doing inside instead of outside and whatnot. Kendrick, as you join in late, if you don't mind putting in the organization you're representing with your name in the chat so that you get credit for being here. So just kind of those ideas of being proactive. Does anybody have a good example of how they've been proactive in a situation that they would like to share? If not, totally understandable. Just thought I would open it up for a little bit of discussion.
I know, sorry. I know for Anchor Bowl last semester, we planned to do it on the intramural fields, but if it rained, we had the old gym booked just in case.
Yeah, exactly. Rain plans are just a really easy way to like, they're a really good example because you can never predict the weather, especially here in Arkansas. Um, there are other ways of being proactive. I know with watching Reagan Hepner playing Cub Camp for the first year that she played it, which was during COVID, she had to make so many plans of be so proactive with her planning because she never knew how the guidelines for COVID were going to change. By the second year that she started planning events, she was really well versed in creating secondary plans for literally any scenario. So just being proactive in our thought processes are super important. Jonathan, as you join us a little late, if you don't mind putting in your name and what organization, there you go. You've done this before. I don't have to remind you. All right. So with that, going in from being proactive, we're going to talk about beginning with the end in mind. So like I said, habit 2 is begin with the end in mind. And this has a story in here and it's like a funeral story. And I want you to think about like planning your own funeral. And I think that's really morbid. So I'm not going to use it as an example. But we're going to talk more about thinking about a goal that you have for like your organization. How do you think with what is like, how do you think where you have that in mind, that end goal in mind first, so that you're not, focused on, you're not focused on the wrong things at the wrong time. If you get what I'm saying, you have an end goal and you're trying to get there. So what does that end goal look like and how do you get there? So beginning with the end in mind, you have the vision of what you want to see. So this step, you kind of write out the steps of how you get there. And one of the things it talks about is writing a personal mission statement for yourself. So the most effective way to begin with the end in mind is to develop a personal mission statement. This is a guide to your daily actions, a statement of your beliefs and how you should lead your life. It focuses on what you want to be, do, and values or principles upon which being and doing are based. Because each individual is unique, a personal mission statement will reflect that uniqueness, both the content and form. It is important to have a personal mission statement because this mission statement is your guide. It helps you keep true to who you are and keeps you focused on the things that are most important to you. So with that being said, I'd like you to take about 3 to 5 minutes to kind of come up with your own mission statement, like a personal mission statement, and how it is true to you, how it can be proactive in the ways that like you plan things out for your life, and kind of hear both sides before like making a decision on things. So one way kind of to get you started, one way to develop a mission statement is to begin with the sentence in stem, completely using your ideas. Some of these common sentence stems can be used are I believe, I will strive to, or I value. So I'm going to give y'all just a few minutes to write out some mission statements for yourself, and you can just type that either in chat or in like a Google Doc or something, whatever you feel most comfortable with. And then if you don't mind to share like a few sentences of things that you value or believe that are personal to you and your personal mission statement, we'll come back from that and move on to the next thing. So I'll give you all a second to kind of write those out. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on. I want you to keep working on those mission statements because those are just important for you to have for yourself more than anything. So our third habit is put first things first. I want you to think what is one thing you could do that you are not currently doing that if you did on a regular basis would make a big difference in your personal life. So like for some of you, that might be like reading a book on a regular basis or going to the gym on a regular basis, something that you could be doing to help your personal life. Just kind of think of those things. Or like maybe it's eating healthier, basically it's more of like a New Year's resolution. Like what is one thing that you think you could be doing to help improve your daily life? But with that, the successful person has a habit of doing things failures don't like to do. Successful people don't like doing them either, but their strength of purpose drives them to get things done. Personal management has progressed through evolutions over time. The first generation was characterized by notes of a checklist reflective of the present, that is what I need to do today. The second generation took a further step and began to look into the future. This evolution was characterized by calendars and appointment books and an attempt to look ahead of scheduled events, activities in the future. The third generation began to establish priorities. As schedules and to-do lists continued to grow, it became critical that we were able to determine what activities and tasks were most important. This provisionary, big word, sorry, began to establish a sense of direction, not only to what needs to be done for today, but also what needs to be done for tomorrow. The fourth generation of personal management focuses on preserving and enhancing relationship and accomplishing results, not just things in time. As personal management has continued to evolve, a new form of prioritization has emerged. This method of prioritization has been based on urgency and or importance of the task. So I'm going to show you all this little kind of diagram that shows what's urgent and important, not urgent, but still important, urgent, not important, and not urgent or not important. So you can kind of see through this that in quadrant 1 are things that need to be done soon and are very important to get done soon. So, if there's a crisis that comes up, pressing problems or deadline driven projects, those are all things that probably need to be at the top of our priorities or the first things that we need to be doing. Things that are not as important but are still urgent include interruptions, emails, calls, and meetings, popular activities, and pressing matters. Things that aren't urgent but are still important are relationship building, finding new opportunities, long-term planning, preventative activities, personal growth, and recreation. And then things that aren't urgent and not important would be trivia or busy work, time wasters, some calls and emails, and pleasant activities. So obviously, quadrant 1 is going to be the things that you're going to be trying to plan around. Those are going to be your things that need to happen immediately. Quadrant 3 is going to be more of those things that are your day-to-day tasks that you need to be getting done as soon as you can. And then you want to go into quadrant 2 and then into quadrant 4. You kind of work your way down and over, if that makes sense, in kind of a reverse N shape through our chart here. So after going over that, we're going to move on to the next section, which is think win-win. Okay. So this is more about conflict management and how then we can solve problems where everyone gets something that they want. Obviously, not every time we have a situation that arises, we're going to have something where where all parties benefit. Sometimes you will have issues that work out where you have both parties benefit, but most of the time that's going to take a lot of high level thinking to get to those solutions. So with this, when we're thinking about win-win, we're trying to come up with solutions that benefit the most people and have outcomes that are agreeable for everyone involved. Does anybody not understand the thought of a win-win situation, or do I need to elaborate on that more? If not, I'm going to go on to habit 5, which is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Okay. So communication is the most important skill in life. We spend most of our waking hours communicating, but consider this: you've spent years learning how to read, write, and years learning how to speak. But what about listening? What training or education have you had that enables you to listen what enables you to listen that's really deeply understands another human being for individual's own frame of reference? Seek first to understand involves the very deep shift in I have no idea what that word is. We typically seek to be first understood. Most people do not listen when with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply. They are either speaking or preparing to speak. They are filtering everything through their own and through their own mind and reading their autobiography into other people's lives. So I'm going to describe this levels of listening. When another person speaks, we usually are listening at one of 4 levels. The first level is ignoring, not really listening at all. 2 is pretending, responding with verbal or nonverbal cues with stock responses like yeah and right. Selective hearing, hearing only certain parts of the conversation, and then listening attentively, paying attention and focusing energy on the words being spoken. Very few of us ever practice the 5th level and the highest form of listening, which is empathetic listening. Empathetic listening means that listening with intent to understand, seeking first to understand, to really understand. Empathetic listeners get inside another person's frame of reference. You see the world the way that they see the world, and you understand their thoughts and how they feel. So as individuals, how do we get to that how do we get to that level of empathetic listening? And it's really not that difficult when you think about it, and it's just really focusing on what people are saying and trying to get a reference of what they are going through as leaders when conflict arises, or when just anything arises, making sure that you're being able to listen actively and empathetically, so that you are not shrugging off somebody and making them feel like their thoughts or ideas are less important, and focusing less on your reply to what somebody says and focusing more on listening to what they have to say. And I think this is a really key thing for a lot of people in life, because I'll admit that I'm somebody who probably has a really bad selective hearing, and I hear very few bits of conversations a lot of the time. So this is something that I need to work on in developing a habit of seeking first to understand before trying to just reply with what I think before I've really understood the whole story. Habit 6, synergize. So what is synergy? The whole is greater than the sum of its part. The relationship which the parts have to each other, the relationship with the part which the parts have to each other is part of it in itself. This concept in mind, I'd like to break into just we're not actually going to break into discussion for that. But does anybody, so kind of what synergy is basically when all parts of an organization or all parts of a mechanism are all working together towards that common goal, and everybody's kind of playing off of each other's energy. That kind of gives you the idea of synergy, where everybody's working together towards a common goal and making headway because everybody's understanding what's going on and able to continue moving in a productive and creative way. Okay, so our final habit is sharpening the saw. Sharpening the saw can be illustrated through this story of a man sharpening, or this man sawing down a tree. Suppose you came upon a man in the woods working feverishly to saw down a tree. What are you doing, you ask. You can't see, comes an impatient reply. I'm sawing down this tree. You look exhausted, you exclaim. How long have you been at it? Over 5 hours, he replies. I'm beat. This is hard work. Well, why don't you take a break for a few minutes and sharpen this saw? You inquire. I'm sure it would go a lot faster. I don't have time to sharpen the saw, the man says empathetically. I'm too busy sawing. So it's kind of obvious, but can anybody kind of give me the moral of that story? If not, I'm not going to make you speak. So basically what that's saying is, this guy would have a lot easier time sawing down this tree if he would take the time to focus on working on his tools or his skills or the things that, help him do the task. Yeah, exactly. Like Jonathan just said in chat, if you don't take the time to hone something, you'll never get the full benefits of that something, which is a really good explanation. Thank you, Jonathan. So sharpening a saw in a literal sense for us, or sharpening a skill, kind of means physically working out, running. In a physical sense would be like working out, running, or eating right. Spiritually would be taking time to reflect on life or a form of religion. Mentally or academically would be going to class, reading, intellectual conversation, and other ways to stimulate thinking. And then finally, in a social or emotional way, having fun or building relationships with those around you. So that's kind of sharpen the saw. And with that, we're going to close. I want you to think about things you may have learned about yourself from today's workshop. What habits really stood out to you, and what are some things that you would do differently because of today's workshop over these habits? But with that, that's really all I have for y'all. So if y'all want to stick around and discuss any of these habits, you can. I'm going to stop the recording here.